Color temperature is how we associate color with coolness or warmth. And basically that's a visual understanding. Warm colors are associated with sunlight and fire, and cool colors are associated with water and cool things. And generally speaking, the hues from yellow, green, all the way around through violet are considered cool, and red-violet around through yellow are considered warm. Cool hues will recede, in other words, they'll push away and distance themselves. Warm hues will advance. If you paint a room a light blue, it will appear larger than if you paint it a light pink or a light peachy color. The redness and the red and the yellow and the pink and the peach will make the space feel smaller. So one of the things that you can do with color is change the sense of space, change the sense of size of any room. Here we have a complementary color scheme. We have the yellow with the violet in the background, and definitely the yellow is seen as coming forward. The violet sits in the background. It's definitely further away visually. Here, this is in the Caribbean, but notice that the blueness of the sky sits behind the warm painted architecture. The yellow in the water actually brings it forward, but the architecture, the building facades actually come forward even of the blue-green and the green sensibility in the water line here. And so we have a real strong sense of warmth advancing and cool receding. We also use color to create focal points. And say for instance, this facade, if it were all gray and cool, if the balconies were cool rather than the warm kind of blonde wood going on, this building would have a whole different sensibility than it does. But the wood balconies and the door here create a really nice accent that increases the curb appeal of the facade. Here also, the room has a lot of stuff in it. It has a sense of being filled and cluttered, and we kind of break that and anchor it with a focal point on the red sofa. And so the eye's going to go right in here, leading right across the table, and we'll leap the table and then land on the sofa. And then everything else sort of becomes fused together. So remember the Gestalt principle of similarity. Things that are alike or similar will group together and be disregarded in favor of the thing that is different. So the red sofa pops visually and becomes an anchor and a focal point for this room. We also use color in terms of balance, and especially in asymmetry, we can balance using different color variations. Colors that are more saturated and darker will appear to be heavier than colors that are lighter and less saturated. And in this poster, we have really warm colors on the top part, and they go from a red orange into an orange into a yellow orange, and then of course we have the black characters. And then here we have basically a black and white figure with some color accents. And the strength of the black-white contrast in terms of the light-dark actually equalizes the larger area of the warm color. There's less contrast of value. The red-orange is a lot lighter than the black, and the yellow-orange is a bit darker than the white. So there's less value contrast and less strength here than there is here. So this little area and the horizontality of her, the axis on her face, actually just balances this entire poster and stabilizes it. Diebenkorn is a Southern California painter and much known for his Ocean Pier series and so forth. And this is one of those pieces. And the brighter, smaller areas of color, the darker ones, and the contrast between the dark and the light, and the smaller shapes in certain areas balance the larger, less saturated, almost gray areas. Color is one of the primary ways we create ambiance or mood. We can get really somber, we can get happy, we can create a lot of energy, we can be really passive in our color schemes. And the right color scheme can quiet down a really busy room, or it can liven up something that needs some help in terms of being a pleasing space. So here, with the preponderance of the grays and the reds and the grayness of the greens, everything is really kind of moody and heavy, solid and somber in this painting. Kind of going the other direction, we're using almost fauvist colors here in a more modern painting, and then of course Gauguin was a fauve painter when he lived, and it's interesting, the color scheme is very similar between these two, but there's a different sense of mood, there's a different quality of idea between this and this. So both of these are brighter colors using a wider palette, a wider range of colors between the complementary pairs and so forth, and just creates a very different mood. Here in this fabric pattern, we have on the left hand side chromatic, the blue and the orange, which is a complementary color scheme. And then on the right hand side, we removed the opposing color. We have the blue and the grays, and it's a monochromatic color scheme, and the difference is dramatic between the expression of the two designs. They're the same design, but they're not the same design because the color makes each one of them different from each other. We also use color to create a sense of space. Both of these patterns they're surface design, they're textiles, and they are similar in color scheme. This is actually an analogous scheme with some chromatic neutrals, and this is a monochromatic. It's a one hue scheme with variations of color within the hue and then the black. But look at the spatial depth that we have in the one on the right because of how the colors are laid out, how the colors are assigned, versus the flatness that is happening in the one on the left. Very different. And so we use color to create a spatial sense. And it can go really flat or it can go really deep. There's another one, the word dwell, and the white headlines are all on a front plane, and they come forward on a flat foreground plane, allowing the volumetric image to sit behind. And so the red comes forward of the neutralized earth tone browns and tans, and the white comes forward because of value contrast. Notice how the inset photograph is hard to discern. Its values, even though it's monochromatic, or pardon me, achromatic, it has no chroma in it. The values cause this to sit and almost be obscured by the more chromatic earth tones around it. Color uses relate to the way that we actually use color, the reasons we use color in the way that we do, and there's basically three options. They're not mutually exclusive. In other words, you can have all three working together within the same design space, or you can have only one. And so we're looking at the Beagle, and the top left, he is optical. He's represented in his actual color with his blue ribbon This is the actual color of the dog. It's just a straight up photograph. And so this is like him in real life. Heightened is where we take the optical and either exaggerate it or subdue it. So upper right is exaggerated. We simplify the color, we oversaturate it, we do something to it that makes it not totally representational. So it's not straight up optical, it is optical but it's heightened. And then we can go the other direction. This is very subdued, but this is still following within the heightened idea. We're still picking up the color sense from the original. We've got the bluish color here, and we've got the brown on the dog, and the skin tone on the hand underneath the dog here, and so forth. And there's just a bare sense of chroma going on in here. Arbitrary is where we work with color based on effect or mood or just for aesthetic choice. We want it to read, so we choose a color that's going to pop forward from the background or something like that. So the sepia tone is an arbitrary color choice. If this were black and white, just an achromatic image, it would be arbitrary. In this painting, the Caucasian flesh tones are very much apparent. The kind of subdued bluish blue-green of the ocean water, and we get a sense of the waves hitting the shore and the sand being kicked up, and it kind of goes brownish in some areas. The straw hat is straw colored and so forth. So even though this is a little more impressionistic in style, this is optical or representational color. This is heightened. Again, the Caucasian flesh is now represented as pink, and the blonde hair is now represented in bright yellow, and then we have the standard blue eyes, the darker pink lips, the straight up red here, and so forth. So all of this area is pretty much heightened color. The black is actually a choice of arbitrariness, and this panel down here is entirely arbitrary. This is arbitrary. The 60s psychedelic art was all accomplished through various types of contrasts, and that's what made it kind of glow and hard to look at. And this is actually from that era. And of course the skin tones are arbitrary, the shadows are arbitrary. That's a complementary violet-yellow relationship. We've got the red into the magenta, and that's with the green around it, and that's a complementary relationship. And it's just, screaming with color, and that screaming with color also makes it kind of hard to read in certain areas. But that was part of the reason that these things were designed this way. So everything in here is an arbitrary use of color. There's one thing that is very important to understand as we see color. First of all, we don't see color in a vacuum or in a void. We always see color in an environment that has color in it. It is impossible to take anything out of an environment when you look at it. And therefore, whenever you look at color, just like when you look at value, it's relative, because the color we're seeing, we're perceiving it as based on the effects of the surrounding colors on that color. So our perception is affected by how you surround color with something. It's affected by everything you're looking at. So you can make one color look very different from itself just by putting a different background against it. And one of the reasons for that is what we call the after image effect. And I'll just demonstrate it here. Hopefully, as I've been chatting away here, you're staring at the black dot in the center of the squares. And I'd like you to keep looking at it for a little bit. And what you should be seeing is a slow fade. You'll be seeing green in the upper left, violet in the upper right, orange in the lower left, and kind of a magenta in the lower right. And those are the complementary colors of those. And so the after image effect is where in your eyes you've got rod cells and cone cells on your retina. The cone cells take in the amount of light, bright light versus dim light, and the rods, that was the rod cells that did that. The cone cells take in the color of the light. And so if you're looking at something that's red, the cells that fire off of red are getting fatigued, just like when you go to the gym and you work a muscle group, that muscle group is going to get fatigued, and then it takes some time to rebuild. And in your eyes that happens a lot more quickly. But if you are looking at that red square and we go here, you're seeing the opposite color, the combination of blue and yellow, where the red was. And the reason I have the gray squares here on this screen is because there is no after image for a mid-value gray. There's no chroma to it, and it's halfway between white and black. So gray, this particular color of gray, is the only color ever for which there is no after image, which is why I ask that you put things on a middle gray board like this, so that there is no interference with what we're seeing from the surrounding area. So basically, it's in this environment alone that we see color accurately. So I'll put these two side by side and let you play around with this a little bit. Here's the same thing. Jasper Johns actually painted this painting based on this concept. So if you're looking at the white circle that's been placed in the middle of this, and you keep looking at that little white circle, and I do that, you should see the after image of the stars and stripes in red, white, and blue.